Hi, everybody. You are at the download. That is MiHIN's webinar, where we discuss these like larger topics about health information exchange, the intersection between healthcare and technology. Here's today's agenda. Here's what you can expect. There will be a welcome by Joanne Jarvie. That is me. We will be going over today MiHIN's The Use Case Factory. And the person that will be doing that is Joanne Jarvie. She is amazing. And then we will have dynamic discussion facilitated by Joanne Jarvie, but also that's on you. Like, come off mute, talk to me. And we don't have to wait, by the way, for the dynamic discussion to happen at the end. This is my rodeo and you can interrupt. You will be rewarded. If you are so passionate that you can't let me move on, then go for it. So MiHIN, when I first learned about MiHIN, I was working at a community-based organization, and I thought, like, MiHIN, is it MiHIN? Yeah, it's your HIN, okay? MiHIN is your HIN. Mi casa es su casa, your health information network. We are a nonprofit, collaboratively governed entity responsible for the legal, secure, private exchange of health information in Michigan. We are an unbiased data trustee, and we don't compete in the marketplace. We are not creating any new or any of our own data. We are a pass-through to try to connect disparate entities in the care ecosystem to get them the data and information that they need. Now, something that you need to know about me is that I am going to be looking at this from a very specific angle. I am not your most technical contact here, but I can connect you with the most technical contact you need. I am looking at big picture stuff. When we go to our bits and bytes, which is our other monthly convening, it gets more technical, but I'm looking at technology as a tool to support human beings, okay? I see human beings and the fact that we can live on this earth healthy and for as long as possible as the driving energy for everything that we do here. So I am going to push you to, next slide. I am going to push you to consider how MiHIN is a technological infrastructure, but also necessitates the human infrastructure, like, to make it work. Technology should only do what the human beings who make it want it to do. Certainly, we are talking about data, right? And we're talking about health information, and health data are not always the same thing. Data is not always communicative in its essence. And so I'm constantly looking for the answers to the question, why? I'm like a 3-year-old, but why? Why are we exchanging this data? What are we trying to communicate? What is our end goal? Why? So I'm the Senior Director of Outreach and Market Communications, and this is how I sort of see the world, and this is how I move through the world and how I'm trying to organize our convenings. I think there might be like an animation on this slide, Kate, yeah, okay. So I use the group development model. I was trained in this model by our partners at MPHI with a grant from Michigan Health Endowment Fund. And it really helps me to organize. And I hope it will help you as you take in, all of this information. So we start with the why, and then we move on to the who, and then we get to the how, and then we end with the what. So you guys probably all want the what. And I'm going to tell you that the what doesn't make sense without the why. So I'm always going to start at the why. We will get to the what. Next slide, please. Okay, so why is MiHIN doing what we're doing? I talked about how we were a data steward, okay? And a data steward's goal we have a couple goals, right? Is to protect. MiHIN is committed to managing private data ethically, which means sharing information responsibly to prevent harm to those individuals who may be sharing their data, but also to prevent harm to potential participants, to prevent harm to potential users of the data, and certainly to protect the wider public. We are, as data stewards, committed to acting. We will always proactively work to identify partners who may be in a position to unlock the value of data and insights contained within the data. We are always going to be looking for a way to get the data moving. And what really hits me in my heart is that we are committed to collaborating, to working with others, to working with all of the entities that make up the health ecosystem, the care ecosystem, who have the goal also of unlocking the value of data when a clear use case exists. Next slide. What's a clear use case? When a clear use case exists to serve the public good, to be used in a responsible manner, we are trying to unlock the value. So how do we define a use case? Rather than making technology the starting point of our work, just because we can do it, it doesn't always mean we should. MiHIN's approach to health information exchange focuses on the purposes for which the data will be exchanged. The why, right? Along with the policies and incentives on a case-by-case basis for the data that will be exchanged. In the world of health information exchange, a use case is a unique sharing of a specific type of information regarding patients and their health. Each use case has a specific purpose and type of data exchange and rules for interactions between people and systems. They will all have that in MiHIN's world of use cases. Each use case may have different access restrictions. It could have different rules for using or further sharing the data. There may be different cost recovery fees or charges, and certainly there may be different technical requirements. So this is a level set. This is our why. So we have these use cases. This is how we look at why data should be exchanged, the purpose for which a certain set of data should be exchanged. And we have theorized that doing this means that each instance of health information will have a fully defined use case, a robust, well-reasoned legal and technical framework to support how the information is sent, received, found, and used. And certainly to make sure that the right people have access to the right information at the right time. We created the Use Case Factory as an homage to our Michigan roots, a lean manufacturing methodology to modularize, to prioritize, define, and advanced data sharing on a large scale. The Use Case Factory manages at technical and legal levels and considers other critical factors in the ideation cycle, like a sponsor or funding, the environment, and operational readiness. Next slide, please. So the why for us with the Use Case Factory. So what I'm giving you right here is sort of like how the sausage is made. You guys want the sausage. I get it. We're going to get to the sausage. The sausage is the what. But we think it's important for you to understand why, for whom, and how. So the why for us in using the Use Case Factory is to create a methodology which is about consistency. The most stable structures are built on the sturdiest foundations. We are after simplification at high levels, even though the exchange of health information adds complexity. What seems simple often requires more complexity than anticipated. But it would seem that developing solutions is much simpler when all the key players have a seat at the table. So this is the for whom, okay? MiHIN is a cloud service that connects the state's care ecosystem. You can see here, our stakeholders include payers and government agencies and state agencies, federal agencies, certainly health systems, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies. So we're moving from the highest level, sort of, to down to the providers and the care teams and the patients. So we aim to create a trusted fabric where the benefits of what we do accrue to all participants, up and down and back, to patients, to providers, to payers, to communities, to our government agencies for public health. So we see who we work for and who we work to support with these use cases as the full care ecosystem. And the use case is our attempt to get the data moving in predictable ways and at scale. Okay, let's talk about scale for a second. At scale means the required size to solve a problem. It typically refers to handling larger volumes of something. You know, we are talking about, you can see our stats here, but we're talking about a lot of data and a lot of data that is exchanged between a lot of different people. And the use case factory is what we use to organize ourselves in this work. Does anybody have a question about that, about our why? Why the use case factory? Why am I even talking about this? If you have a question, please let me know, but I might get to it. All right, so there's our why. We're gonna move now, our why and for whom. If you don't know for whom the benefits of health information exchange are supposed to accrue, you can please go back to our MiHIN 101. And also, if you are part of a care ecosystem, data exchange is meant to work for you and to support what you need to do to make human beings better. Basta. So how do we do it? Okay, so this is like, I don't know. I mean, I think this is boring, but maybe you guys won't. We're going to move through it. Okay, so how? So this is our core framework as we look to enable scalable health information exchange. And there are sort of five levels, you could say. There is the core technical infrastructure. There is the legal framework. There is the governance structures. There is the use case development, and then there is sequenced onboarding. This is how we move through our work. I'm going to move fast around this stuff because, like I said, this is how the sausage is made, and you guys are here for the sausage, but it's important. Okay, so the goal of technology. So let's see, where'd we go? Okay, so we're on technology. The goal of technology in the use case factory is to enable data sharing through interoperable use case products and services. The objective here is for us, MiHIN, to procure or build technologies that can receive, match, attribute to providers, route, manage, apply rules, and then return messages back to care teams and end users in the healthcare system based on HIPAA. Next slide, please. A HIPAA relationship is made up of both the patient whose data is being shared and the individuals, organizations, and agencies that meet the definition of covered entities under the rule and that must comply with rules requirements to protect the privacy and security of that health information. HIPAA defines a covered entity as being a healthcare provider, a health plan, or a healthcare clearinghouse. The covered entity has a HIPAA relationship, a legal binding duty to protect and secure protected health information with their individual patient or an individual person that has accessed that care or treatment. The use case factory uses a modular legal agreement structure to improve adoption. It's not everything all at once. Our work together with our participants goes use case by use case. The goal is for participating organizations to become legally connected to their health information network. MiHIN is your HIN. So this is just an example of, how you can look at our legal framework. Participating organizations sign on to our trust framework through a set of standardized legal documents to become a trusted data sharing organization, to become a participant in the network. Becoming legally connected is accomplished by signing the qualified sharing organization agreement. And if a participating organization is small or independent and doesn't have an interest in contributing to our governance, a lighter version of that legal agreement called the short or simple data sharing agreement is available. After the trusted data sharing agreement, an entity will sign the master use case agreement and then a legal use case exhibit that defines what data will be shared based on each use case. The use case factory helps to build trust by establishing a set of data governance structures. The goal here is to ensure key stakeholder feedback can be received. The objective is that recommendations feed directly into the mechanisms that inform the management team of the use case factory, the management team of MiHIN, and its board of directors. The governance structures where the information from the use case factory filters through include a board of directors, an operations advisory committee, and its working groups. Next slide, please. So not only is MiHIN a mechanism to exchange information, but as a data steward, remember, our goal is collaboration. We are a means for connecting the stakeholders. Stakeholders have representation on our board. Payers, Medicaid and commercial, health systems, the Primary Care Association, Michigan Hospital Association, MDHHS, and the Health Information Technology Commission. The existence of the Health Information Technology Commission in Michigan underscores the state's commitment to meaningful exchange. And one of its central roles is to help ensure that the non-for-profit health information exchange is working and paying off. While we are a separate nonprofit entity, we are monitored by the state's HIT Commission, and they do have a seat on our board. MOAC, there at the bottom, is our Operations Advisory Committee, and it's the proving ground for use cases. Members are supposed to provide support for these use cases, to ideate, and to advise through feedback and expertise that encourages the implementation of valuable use cases. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I think it's going to start getting more interesting for you. Not that it's not riveting, because it probably is. Kate, is it riveting? I think it's riveting.
Still riveting. Absolutely.
Riveting. Okay, so now we're at this use case development stage. End users, stakeholders are encouraged to innovate locally with MiHIN on use cases through a standardized process that takes a use case from conception to adoption. The use case factory is one where anybody can submit an idea for a use case and become its champion. As part of this process, the use case is defined and evaluated, funding is identified, the use case is piloted, and then the use case is refined. It goes to the MiHIN board where it's voted to be implemented and measured and adopted. At 68% adoption rate is a measure that would be considered to be successful adoption. Next slide. So I'm going to go through the phases of our use case development. We're going to move through from conception to planning and development. Okay, conceptual. Here's the first phase in the use case development, which is the fourth stage of the use case factory. A variety of stakeholders can sponsor a use case. They come to MiHIN with an idea. MiHIN seeks to convene payers, clinical organizations, stakeholders to determine how that program, how that use case will be of the greatest benefit to all of the people that we are supposed to be supporting, right? And within this stage, we often hold workshops. We often try to get as many people from as many different areas to look at this idea for sharing information and to bring to the surface the barriers, the concerns, the opportunities. We then produce something like a white paper or a finding to the sponsor of the use case, which explains, what we've heard. We went out. We are asking for feedback from our stakeholders. We want to understand just how valuable this is, or maybe how hard it will be to implement. And then we write out, we storyboard personas. And sometimes we even find a stakeholder to help us pilot at this very early stage. Next slide. The use cases that are currently in conceptual phase, nope, thanks. Good. The use cases that are currently in conceptual phase are listed here.
Joanne, did you see the chat too? I think it kind of ties in here. Lindsay had asked if there's a way to find out what use cases have been proposed.
So there is a way to find out what use cases have been proposed. And the way to do that would be to have a seat on the first on the governance committee. Now, if I'm doing a convening and we are trying to move a use case from conceptual to planning and development, we will hold these workshops, right? There's going to be convenings. And during that convening, we will tell you that this use case has been proposed. We are trying to find out who this use case can benefit and what the barriers will be. Do we have a list of use cases that have been proposed, publicly available? Beyond what I have here, the answer is no. Not for now. No, for now. Let's talk about why it would be good for us to have use cases that have been proposed publicly available. Well, we can do that later. All right, so we're going to move then. All of that stuff happens in the conceptual phase. And now things are moving, right? We're grooving. And we are moving into the planning and development stage. At this point, we have to design how this thing works, right? We have to figure out how it can be implemented. We have to start tying those technical, legal, and governance structures into this picture, right? What does a use case exhibit look like that you have to sign, right? What is in there? And what is the legality of that? What are the ins and outs of that? But also, how is it technically going to work, right? And we need a lot of help with this. We often use our participants to help us figure this stuff out. Our operations advisory committee should be helping us figure this stuff out. Planning and development. We are developing the project. This is phase 2 of our use case development, which is the 4th stage of our use case factory. These are the use cases, MiHIN use cases that are currently in planning and development. Okay, yes, the slides are available. We're going to put them on the website. Next slide. Implementation. All right, how do we make it so that like lots of people do this? Because if lots of people are doing it, then lots of people are doing it. The stronger a network gets, the stronger a network gets. It's fabulous, really. Here is where this is a very, very important, important step. And this is sort of where MiHIN and the stakeholders and the sponsors of the use case look to figure out what incentives or policy measures might need to be in place to make it possible and valuable for that information to flow. We are creating technically an onboarding package. How do people get on, right? What else do they need? What other use cases might they need in order to get this moving, right? What is, and I'm not going to go too deep into this, but we have had success in Michigan because there are incentives for sharing certain health information. And when those information, the way that that information is shared is measured, and there is a way to standardize. And we have created like conformance reporting. We can go further into this at another time, but just know that when incentives or penalties come to the table, so do measurements. And there are different ways to measure use case participation, use case standardization, and use case value. And implementation is really when the stuff hits the fan. I don't know how else to put it. These are the use cases that are currently in implementation. Next slide, please. Adoption, utilization, demand. People are coming to us. We heard you have this. Can we do it? How can we do it? Sustainability. People are being paid to do it. People are losing less money. We can keep this moving because it's good for all of those levels of stakeholders that we are committed to supporting. So adoption is where people start seeing the value, earning the money, right? We can start measuring the trends, and we could and should start our continual evaluation of how we got to this point and what else needs to be refined. Adoption is the last phase in the use case development, which is the fourth stage of the use case factory. So this makes sense to me, and I'm really hoping that it's making sense to you. These are the use cases, MiHIN use cases, that are currently in adoption. Okay. We're at the last step in the use case factory, and it is sequenced onboarding. Look, we are trying to create a rapid learning environment where we can get as many people involved at any one stage as possible and quickly. People will ask, like, how long does it take a use case to cycle through the use case factory? And the truth is that sometimes we have the technical ability. There is a federal or state requirement, and a use case can come to fruition in a couple months. Somebody has piloted with us. We have wonderful, wonderful participants and partners and stakeholders that kick the tires with us over and over and over again. And those participants are making it easier for everybody else. They're doing the hard work. The members of our Operations Advisory Committee, the members of our governance committee are the ones that are doing the work so that the network can be stronger and the network can grow for the benefit of the full care ecosystem. But so sometimes it goes quickly. No, go back. Sometimes it goes quickly. But look, other projects, other use cases can last for years. What I think is really cool, a takeaway for you, what I think is really cool, and look, I'm biased because I work here and I love it and I believe in it. But what I think is cool about this methodology is we can track like where a use case didn't make it. What's holding it up from being adopted? Why hasn't it moved into implementation or past the conceptual phase? Is it because it's not legally viable? Is it because we just don't have the technology yet? Is it because not enough stakeholders found the value? Within the use case methodology, because there are stages and because there are phases, we can also go back and see why things don't work. For things to work, you have to try and try and try and try. And it's a numbers game in life in general. Keep trying. Some of it is going to work. A lot of it won't. And I think that this use case factory really shows, our approach to this crazy work of health information exchange. Next slide. All right, we're at the what, guys? And it's sort of like a teaser. So our use cases belie our services and our products and our tools. So when you come here and you come to learn through bits and bytes about certain solutions, or certain data flows or certain services that we're really digging into, first of all, because you said you wanted it, so let us know, but also because we are trying to advertise to get implementation, to advertise to get pilots, to advertise to get to adoption, right? As we're talking about this work, there is a use case that belies all of that stuff. It is the foundation. In Michigan, at MiHIN, the use cases are the foundation, and you are signing them. You are participating in them. There are summaries and implementation guides and exhibits and workshops and white papers that have all gone into the creation, and money that have all gone into the creation of this. And you should be able to track it back to a use case and the use case factory. Next slide. So here's, that's the use case factory. It should be like one of those things where like we need our own music. We need our own use case factory music, Kate. But are you interested? How do you work with MiHIN? Are you interested in working with MiHIN? Well, the first step is to identify a use case. What do you want the data for? Why do you want to share the data? What is the data telling you? When? What is the data telling other people that you want them to know? Sometimes do you ever say like, well, how could they do this without knowing where this person has been? How could they make these decisions without knowing what medications this person is on? Those are good questions. And we believe that with use cases, we have defined the purpose. What is the data going to be used for? What are the policy challenges? What are the governance challenges? How can anybody afford to do this? What does it take to do this? But mostly for everybody here, what use cases is your organization onboarded to? What use cases, what are the data flows that your organization has deemed important or valuable? And do they come into your day-to-day work? And are they valuable? And are there others? That's where we're at, guys. That's all I have. What do we think? Is there something that didn't make sense? Do you want to dig in more? Tell me, somebody. Is anybody out there? I'm hearing crickets.
Joanne, there is a question in the chat. Is there a way to find
Yes.
out what use cases have been proposed?
I covered that, but I'm happy to do it again. There is no public list of what use cases have been proposed, but I will tell you that certainly there have been times when use cases have been proposed by more than one entity or more than one sector. And those use cases are the ones that now have 3 sponsors and 3 different people, champions pushing it through to get it implemented. That's what we want. We want people to come to us with their ideas for what is valuable. And then we want to say, by the way, 2 years ago, somebody said the same thing. We tried, we asked some people, we did a couple convenings, and now we're ready. Lindsay, I see that your hand is up.
Thank you. Good morning. So we're really interested in trying to figure out how we can get some dental data. I'm from the Michigan Primary Care Association, by the way. So really interested in trying to figure out how we can connect dental from our QHCs and getting the overall patient picture of not just their medical health, but their dental health as well. So just wondering if that's been proposed already or what.
That has been proposed. I would not say at this point that it is 100, that it is squarely in the conceptual phase, but I will tell you that my hope is that in 6 months it will be there.
Do you think it's just a matter of funding then, or is there is there anything that we can do to help provide support on that? Or
I don't think it's just a matter of funding. I think that if you go back to how we look at these use cases, I think first of all, there's a technical way that information is coded for in the dental world. And we need to get our arms around that. We need to learn more. I've reached out to the Dental Association. If you're here, write me back. So there's like the vocabulary, right? What's the vocabulary? And how do we make it so that their vocabulary matches what you guys need to know? And where will that sit, right? How will that technically work? There's also the legalities. There's also the governance. At this point, we might have a couple of dental clinics connected, but I don't recall that there are any dental clinics that are sitting on our governance structure. So there are these things, Lindsay, and I think that the way that if you think about the use case factory, all of those things need to line up. And we really hope they do.
yeah,
We hope they do. We want that too. We want the network to be as robust as possible. Let's see. I am seeing, could you share a specific use case success story? Zach, I think that what I would do to answer your question is, Kate, can you go back to our adopted slide? Okay. So the next one. All right. So does anybody on the call for Zach, does anybody have any success stories about how a better decision was made after you received information that your patient had been admitted, discharged, or transferred from another facility?
Hey, Joanne, this is Megan Gibbs. So for those on the call that I don't know, I am a team member at MiHIN, and I think I have a really good one, and it always sticks out in my mind. So a couple of years ago, we had an organization start to receive ADTs from MiHIN, and they were able to figure out that there was a specific individual who recognized that he could work the system in a way that, believe it or not, his wife actually would not make him any sort of meals, and she did not give him pop or soda. So he would call 911 and complain of chest pains and then go kind of through the hospital system of getting all the test runs. But really, he was looking forward to having a hot meal and a soda while in the hospital. So once they kind of caught on to that, they were able to kind of work with him and get him the resources that he needed. So he wasn't utilizing the hospital system to necessarily obtain a hot meal. So that's one that's, kind of wild. It happens. But I know that was a major win for that organization, especially because they were a little bit smaller and from a rural community.
You're on mute, Joanne.
I said terrible things, so I'm glad. About you, Megan. I said bad things about you. Anybody else that's here that works with us, do you have any, do you have any success stories about how care would have gone differently if you hadn't been able to look at a patient's longitudinal record?
Hi, Joanne. This is Miranda, and I'm from Access Health. I actually do have a really great one. We implemented the ADTs as well, and we had an individual. So typically what happens before we had the ADTs, we would have to wait for the report from the health system to say, hey, so-and-so was in the emergency room for this, this, and this. And that can take anywhere between 2 and 3 weeks, sometimes longer, depending on the health system. But with the implementation of the ADTs, our nurses are able to see those in real time. We had an individual who had gone in for some cardiac issues and who needed some immediate referrals and whatnot. And so she was able to intersect those right off the bat and make sure that he was able to follow up with the correct cardiologist and what he needed to do for his cardiac issues. Whereas in the past, we would have had to have waited weeks to get that information. And then in the hopes, we would have to have hoped that the patient would have done what they needed to do to follow up on their own without having any support from us. So we very, very much love the ADTs.
Thank you, Miranda. We love to hear it. Megan, do you know how many active care relationships like we have? Isn't it like 7.6 million? I don't know. I need to go back.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot.
So active care relationships, and we can absolutely get into that. That is our active care relationship service. I mean, imagine Miranda's story times 7.6 million. That's what I like to imagine.
No, absolutely. And those individuals that fall through the cracks because they don't follow up soon enough, if they don't have the support behind them.
It's good to know also, what medications not to give, where people have been, who else they have an active care relationship with, who else is in this person's care team. There is rich information in this data. And I think that like the first, 7 to 10 years of this HIE journey, remember, it hasn't been that long. I guess it started in 2009. So, and I have no idea what year it is, but so let's just say that it hasn't been around for that long. And I think that we're in a very, very interesting spot where we are moving from transaction, from getting the stuff moving, from building the pipes to making sure that these use cases, can they be adopted? Does the factory, does it work from transaction to transformation? Let's see the transformation. Let's use this. Let's use the richness of this. So we are currently an eHealth Exchange member. Hope, thanks. Mike Gleason, is there a diagram that illustrates where each use case is in the development process? Do you mean beyond just understanding where it is in the use case, like beyond just conceptualization, planning and development, implementation and adoption?
Yeah, just a diagram that shows us where each one has progressed to. I know this was something that's been generated previously. But it's good to see when progress is made and new use cases that are evolving, that are on the newer side, for us to consider, engagement, or if there's opportunities or feedback that we can contribute to it.
Right. Do you mean, so you're saying that the 8 slides that I went through where I said, this is implementation and these are the use cases that are in implementation. You're saying you'd like to see that on one slide.
Correct.
Okay. I think we can do that. In fact, we had one, right? We had one, Mike, some time ago. And on that diagram were also use case scenarios and pilot activities. So it got really, it can get very detailed and it can get down into the weeds. And I really, in communicating this, really wanted to bring it up to the legal use case level. But we have been able to sort of figure out where pilot activities are and scenarios are. So the short answer is yes, but I didn't use it for my slide, and it is constantly evolving.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, Joanne, is that it is constantly evolving, and we may lose sight on it from time to time. So it'd be great if it were regularly available,
It would
whether
be
that's
so
online.
cool also, Mike, if we could like figure out, somebody take note here, Kate, like if we could figure out how on our website, even if we could like click on the streams of use cases and see even within each of the different, so the use cases supporting our network infrastructure or results delivery or care coordination, public health, if we could see within each stream where they were. I mean,
Yeah.
this would be a really cool animation, and it would be, like you said, it would be great for people to know where it is and how they can get involved. But I will also push back, Mike, to say that people can get involved and support or work on a use case at every level and should be.
Yeah, I think many of us are, Joanne. I think there's so many of them that we participate in. I mean, looking at the adoption screen right now, I think we're actively involved in all of them.
Great.
So there's a lot of work that goes into that, even though it's through testing and it is widely used and in production, but there's also new work that's
Workflow.
constantly being done, and
I know it.
workflows that can be improved that may not be a focus at the moment, but there may be some thought or action that spurs a desire to further participate in those, and just having some awareness of where they're at in relation to MiHIN's focus and development, or at least a place where we could go to check would be fantastic.
Okay, I will take that as an action item.
Thank you, Mike. That actually kind of played into the question I wanted to ask Joanne as well. I was kind of perusing your website while you were speaking and just kind of looking at some of the other use cases that are in there. And I wasn't sure at what stage those use cases were. Are they at all different stages? Are these use cases that have already been adopted? They've gone through all their phases, or are all those? But I think we just kind of covered that.
So the use cases that are on the website all have their implementation guides, which means that those use cases that are on our website have already made it to implementation. Like
Okay.
basically you can onboard to them.
Good to know. Good to know. You also stated early on, Joanne, that the presentation, the PowerPoint, was going to be on the website.
Yeah.
Where about on the website are those?
So it's under
Typically located.
convenings. Kate, will you put the link on, because it has all of our previous downloads and bits and bytes there too, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. So I would love to get that on the chat. Thank you.
Perfect.
Let's
That's
go back
wonderful.
down to these questions. I don't want to know. So how does patient consent and authorization fold into use case development? So Damien from Texas, right? You're a fan of MiHIN. How's Texas doing? Does Texas have a MiHIN? All right, so Damien, Michigan is an opt-out state, which means that human beings are opted into the opportunity to have their information shared by their care team. And they can also opt out. So I think that, I don't know if that is, sort of sort of like the first step in talking about consent and authorization. But we also have, Kate, if you can go back to, I don't know if it's in implementation or if it's in planning and development, but we have long been working, okay, so planning and development. We have long been working on electronic consent management solution. We call it ECMS, and we've been working on this for a long time. And this is a use case that has just started to pilot. It is, let's see, can you go back to the activities and the planning and development, one more, thanks. Yes, so we are in demonstration. I don't know if we have do we have a full implementation guide, Megan, for and a full use case exhibit for ECMS yet? Do you know?
That's a great question. I think Van would be the perfect individual to ask.
He would. Van is one of our product market managers, and he's fabulous. But the e-consent, the question is sort of, I hope I answered some of that for you. Let's go back to the last slide. Oh, actually, guys, one more thing that I want to say. It's 10:54. I hope this has been useful. I hope that I hope that it creates some type of transparency. I hope that it creates a shared language for you to be able to use with your account managers or with, your partners at MiHIN to be like, well, do you have this for this, or where are we with this? Or is it part of, we have to start sharing our language more, and that's my job, and it is my pleasure. Next slide. Bits and bytes. So bits and bytes, remember these downloads are like, they're like soft. I'm like soft. I talk about high level stuff, the meaning, the why, human infrastructure. And bits and bytes is really meant to be me sort of bringing in really the more technical people to dig into a use case or a service or a product solution that we have to offer. The next Bits and Bytes is scheduled for February 22nd. And the way that I want you to understand how this fits in is that we have a use case that is currently in its conceptual phase called Alert and Query. Essentially, we will be trying to ascertain what information could we query for when a person enters the ER. And when a person enters the ER, how do you have access to that information? What can you explore the journey that the client has taken to get to you at the emergency room department? We have partnered with Point Click Care on their emergency department optimization tool, and they will be talking about how people have used it to decrease ED utilization by as much as 81%. They will talk to you about what information you could see in that tool and how you might use it. And we are really interested in building out this use case for Alert and Query, again, to understand what information does emergency room staff need to have and when? And can we query to go get it specifically from where? From a SNF, from a behavioral health clinic, from a doula. The doula, I want to do a doula use case. Critical information. What information do you hope ER doctors have about your clients? How do you get it there? That's the kind of stuff for Alert and Query. And so I hope I'll see you at Bits and Bytes. I hope you keep coming back. Is there any more questions or anything for the good of the group? You can always reach out to me. My job is to connect you. My job is to be like the Yenta and to bother people. So if you like this, you are like mostly people don't like me. So if you like me, keep coming back. If you don't like, I'll probably bother you. And register for Bits and Bytes. And thank you for participating and working with MiHIN. Also, guys, let's extend grace. It's been a tough week already, and it's a tough life here. And we here in Michigan are feeling it. It seems like we're feeling it over and over and again. So thanks for being here, and let's just be gentle with each other. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.